Morning to all the listeners of Extreme FM, listening at home here in SVG, listening in the region, listening in the rest of the world. At this time, we're joined by none other than Reverend Adolph Davis, Methodist minister, formerly superintendent of the Kingstown Chantabulais Circuit. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome.
Good morning, Lady Crystal.
Yes, how are you this morning? How's Christmas treating you?
Good.
That good sounds a little strange.
It comes with a little effort, but it is generally good.
Generally good.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. I guess that's good.
Yes, it's
All right.
good that it's generally good.
That's generally good. All right, all right. So, how long have you been a minister for?
20 something years. I left St. Vincent, 1999 for training, was ordained in 2002. So, I suppose post ordination, you'll say
Oh,
it's 20 years.
oh, okay. So you're 1 year shy of the of his
Yeah.
government's time in office. All right.
Well, it's interesting. I think sometimes
We're not going to this one.
those things begin to define timing for persons.
Okay. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. Now, we were talking about this morning some questions that people might have about the Bible. We started off with Adam and Eve and the apple and what was the apple and moving towards where all the other people come from, where Christianity came from. I'm pretty sure you would have heard a bit of the discussion, but I'm going to read some comments that were coming in. Uh, he's asking, well, somebody was even asking who created the sky. When you answer, oh, when you answer, he asks, how do you know? Like, okay, so there are questions based on belief, and there are questions whose answers will be based on fact, right? Rather interesting questions as well because you have to take it with a leap of faith. I know that there's the Bible, and people have so many questions about the Bible, but um how do you approach questions like these? Like when they start questioning things about the Bible that seem to have some sort of logical either meaning or reference to them.
Well, I think perhaps the beginning point in approaching the Bible and religion, etc., is faith. Sorry, before I get to faith, is humility. Questions are important and good, and I think sometimes, unfortunately, some persons have rightfully gotten the impression that religion is afraid of questions, and God is afraid of questions and interrogation. Questions are important and necessary. It helps us to seek and get clarity. But questions have to come with a level of humility. And I think sometimes we assume a human intellect is so complete and comprehensive that we don't understand that even things that are understandable, we may not understand until perhaps later we understand them. And I think it's an interesting thing. For example, say 300 years ago, if you told somebody that, or 2 million years ago, if you told somebody that we could move from England to St. Vincent in 6 hours, that's impossible.
I know, right?
Just come on, that's you're being ridiculous. But at the time, the extent of our experience made it seem as if those things were not possible, and our knowledge at the time said those things were not possible. And so I always say to people, we have to be humble enough to realize that our human intellect is limited. And so a lot of times when we don't understand something, in the season of not understanding, we are facetious enough to conclude that it can't be so because we don't understand it. And then later on, having been so facetious to say, since I don't understand it, it cannot be. Later on, when we have more evidence and realize, oh, sometimes there are persons who are humble enough to say I was wrong and others double down. So I think we begin with humility. Humility also helps us to appreciate that a lot of the questions we ask, I don't assume to be the person who knows everything.
No pun intended there.
No pun intended.
No, it's in the Bible.
You're right. But sometimes we fail to realize that a lot of the questions we are wrestling with and we have asked persons have not only wrestled with them, but many of them have already been answered. You see, and unfortunately, as Christianity, I'll speak more personal about Christianity. I don't think we have been as helpful, as responsible in the passing on of information. But part of it is because of some of the cultural dynamics that we grew up with. You see, when we grew up years ago, you grew up in a more trusting environment, a more communal culture. So if your parents believed ABC, there's an assumption that whether they understood it or who they got it from understood it. So you went with it because you trusted that somebody before you did the interrogation, had the experience. And so you just received it and passed it on. And unfortunately, some of those older societies didn't take as much time in not just passing on the what, but the why. So by the time it comes to some generations later, where social media, internet access, and all of that, where we're exposed to an abundance of information and people start questioning, then you ask your grandmother, your mother questions, and they didn't need, quote unquote, need to be asking those questions. And so they seem lost in answering. And then a young person, now, because mommy can't answer, sometimes even the minister, priest, or pastor can't answer, granny can't answer, they then assume then this means that there is no answer and this stuff is flawed. But the society would have gone through some of those things, passed them on, but didn't pass on the why of it. And that's why, for example, if you notice, sometimes there's some traditional practices in our community, grandparents say, don't do this, don't do this. Because some of it looks wrong, we dash it away and then realize, but wait, there was a deeper value and meaning in it that we never got. And so we threw away, as old people say, the baby and the bathwater. And so I think that is part of the dilemma we have. And with of course, with internet over the last, 20 years, 10 years, depending on how you range it, people have been exposed to a host of information.
Conspiracy theories. And
yes. And the problem with that is, number one, we don't know the sources and the legitimacy of some of these sources. And two, some of the information may be legitimate in terms of its source, but how people use that information is then misleading. And that's, of course, part of why, even like the pandemic, I think the pandemic has revealed for us the challenge of information overload. That everybody is able to go on the internet and everybody now becomes an authority in everything, in religion, in science, in virology, you name it. Because so long as you could go on the internet and somebody says this is what it is, especially if you have distrust in what you have already had, then you are now ready. Because let's say, for example, somebody grows up in Christianity and they see the pastor, minister, not living the kind of life that is admirable, may have even caused them hurt. They see grandmother abusing and they see another person who's elder in the church and leader, and the hypocrisy. So you lose a level of distrust in this institution. And so when you go online and now you hear a man telling you, well, this is what is the real religion and this is not what is and this is who what is and all of that, you're far more open to believing those things because your experience of the religion, Christianity, was so messed up that your appetite for something else was even greater. I'll make 2 points on that.
Interesting, though.
What's his name there? Gandhi in India is quoted to have said, if Christians were faithful in living the Christian values, principles, and teachings, all of India would have been converted to Christianity. And I've always thought that to be such a profound statement, that Gandhi was effectively saying Christians are their worst enemy. And he was recognizing that there was something so authentic, so profound, so outstanding about Christianity. But when you look at the people who are advocating this thing, they have betrayed the very thing they advocate. Christianity is, in a sense, some would call it a worldview. It is one way of approaching understanding the world. So you have choices.
Right.
And I've often said to people, a lot of people, especially because Christianity is still the most dominant religion in the world, a lot of people spend time trying to figure out how Christianity is flawed, wrong, and bad. What I've often asked persons to do, okay, because Christianity, we don't have all the answers, everybody don't have all the answers. when somebody tells you this is bad, let them present to you the alternative.
What is good?
And see
Okay.
if that alternative is seriously better. And I'll give you an interesting example. Years ago, when I was in Guyana, I always tell people this: Guyana has three main religions: Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam. And I was asked to do the prayer at the Heroes Day, the Memorial Remembrance Day celebration. I went reluctantly because, there was something about war that I know doesn't sit well with Christianity. And again, that's the other problem, understanding Christianity in the context of the Bible and how the Old Testament evolves into the New Testament. Because sometimes people get stuck in, it's in the Bible, meaning it's in the Old Testament. But anyway,
right.
When I was to do the prayer, the first person that prayed was the Hindu. And the Hindu basically prayed saying, if it worked out right, if effectively, if you fought and there was war and you won, then that was God. Why, in all of that. The Muslim prayed that by any means necessary, effectively. In other words, if you need to work towards peace, then you may have to fight a war to get towards peace. And then I prayed. And I prayed that we would learn that violence, war, etc., never really solves anything. It only multiplies violence and aggression and so forth. And that we will find alternative ways of being able to resolve our issues. And I lifted up a Jesus who, instead of fighting back violently, in fact, gave himself, demonstrating a power in love that we are still talking about 2,000 plus years later. My point is, when I listened, for example, the Muslims' approach and view, I listened to the Hindus' approach and view, and I looked at the Christians' approach and view. For me, maybe for somebody else, they might prefer by any means necessary approach to life. And maybe for somebody else, they may prefer, well, so long as it happens is what God wants. But for me, I was a million times over satisfied and convinced that what Jesus represents demonstrates the best of what we can be as human beings. And I'll give you another point to that.
Okay.
With all the questions and uncertainties, one of the things I have found outstanding is virtually most religions and even atheists, the high point of Christianity is Jesus Christ. Whatever all the other fluff that people make a big issue of, the high point of Christianity is Jesus Christ. And one of the things I have found fascinating, Hindus, some variety of Hinduism has Jesus Christ as a god, because Hinduism, some sources say Hinduism has about 8 million gods, because it is a polytheistic religion. Islam has Jesus as a prophet, an outstanding prophet. Atheists, you find, some of them will tell you, they don't believe in God and all that, but Jesus is a great moral example and teacher.
Okay.
And of course, Christianity believes Jesus is God in flesh, which is where Christmas and all those highlight celebrations come from. My point is that whatever people's issue are with Christianity, one of the things I've found to be outstanding is, let's say everybody, just for generalization's sake, everybody has said that there is something instructive, outstanding about this person, Jesus, what he teaches and what he represents, that embodies the best of who we are and what we could become. Some people say, oh, you have these Greek, these Egyptian ISIS and Horus and all of those things. I say, whatever, even if you say Jesus is a myth, for those who have all that argument and ignore the historical fact, there is no myth about how we can be as a human being that is better than the myth of Jesus Christ. There's no better representation of who we ought to be and how we ought to live than the Jesus Christ story, even if you consider it a story. Okay. So for me, even if you were to tell me it is a myth, ignoring all the historical facts, there's something outstanding about Jesus, represented in the stories of Scripture, etc., that lifts up the best of what we ought to be, can be, and what human beings should be. And so I know there are always going to be, there's some questions I can't answer.
Okay.
But certainly for the ones I can, I have no doubt in my mind that, and I remember once I was on this program and a man said, in a sense, he, really had issue with all the religious thing and so forth. And then he came back to say, but the truth is, he knew some fellas who were real bad man kind of thing. And when those guys started going to church and gave their life to Christ, they were vastly different human beings. And I have found, even in like a Guyana, the expectations people have of the Christian was significantly different and even higher in terms of moral expectation than they had of some of the other religions. Because you will hear them, but she not supposed to be a Christian, but he not.
Oh boy.
Unchristian people.
We hear them here too?
Yes. Unchristian people have a deeper sense of what Christianity should should represent, and know that there's something noble about what Christianity should represent, which is why a lot of times people get so disgusted, disenchanted about it and so forth. And so I tell people, I wasn't there in the beginning. The Bible captures, gives us effectively the substance of what the beginning stories are. As with every story, every record, you could look for the missing pieces and make the issue about the missing pieces. Or you could look for the main issues and be edified by it. So, same way, I came in here this morning, and if somebody were to record the story of this experience, they will say, Reverend Davis came in to Extreme Studio, did an interview with Crystal and DJ Man, and they talked about. But somebody else now may say, boy, that's why I don't believe them when they tell the story. Because you notice they didn't tell me how you had two walkers outside in the area there. So, and one of them man been on the phone. Why the man been on the phone? Because the man may be listening to the thing that, and you're thinking, okay. But that, you could always look for the things that are peripheral to try to effectively undermine the credibility of the main event, main message. Mm-hmm. Or you could get the main. There's no way the Bible, capturing the beginning of time, was going to be able to give you every step of the way in terms of how the story unfolded. So what it sought to do.
That would have been nice though.
Well, except that it would have still had holes. It
would have been confusing, but it would have been nice.
But it still had holes, because even if you told let me call it every detail. Well, first of all, you can't tell every detail, because once you start trying to capture, you have to leave out details if you're trying to write down any story. And once you've written down the story with more detail than we have now, the parts that you don't include are still going to be a problem.
Okay, so any which way you turn is going to be an issue.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. The book of John ends with a very interesting thing. The Gospel of John. John in chapter 30 says, 29, Lord 30, says, if you were to record everything that Jesus did, all the books in the world can't capture all of that.
Okay.
He says, however, these were written so that you will come to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and through believing you will have life. Now, I think what John says doesn't just represent John and his approach to what he wrote. I think John captures the story of the whole Bible. And I think John 20, just read it, verse 30 and 31. John says, now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these were written so that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and through believing you may have life in his name. In the last chapter 21, he says it this way. He says, this is the disciple who is testifying to these things and has written them. And we know that his testimony is true. But there are also many other things that Jesus did. If every one of them were written, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. So John is a
boss, man. Jesus is a boss.
John is not assuming to tell you everything, but he's saying, I tried to tell you enough that allows you to understand who Jesus is and believe who Jesus is, so that in believing you may have life. I think that's the substance of the Bible. And so
believe.
Yeah, being able.
A caller made mention of that before.
Well,
believe.
Language.
Yeah, yeah.
Language. Because whether we like it or not, even, I heard him and I understand the concern he's trying to address. But the truth of the matter is there are intangible realities of life that we know are true. For example, we know love is true, but you can't see love. What you see is love manifested in people's interaction. And even then, sometimes you see somebody does do something to another. That doesn't tell you they love the person. I could give you a rose today, and another person could give you a rose, the same act, and one has nothing to do with love and the other does. We don't see love, but we know love is true. And so the language of belief and faith helps to connect us with the unseen, unsensed world, the not touch and feel world. That is a real part of our human experience.
I think that's one of the trickiest things about
Yep,
life.
yep,
Things, and the
yep,
Bible speaks about faith and things that you cannot see and believing and so on.
yep.
Oh boy, that's really
And
difficult.
that's what makes it difficult. But
Yeah.
to be honest, even the things that are seen are difficult. Because
Difficult
you
to watch?
put it this way, no, to process. You said what we see up there is the sky. Well, the guy said, and then if you said gases and all of that.
Sky is a bunch of gases.
Right. And then the truth is, have you really touched these gases and all of that? So you see something, and it as far as you are made to understand.
Yeah, scientists tell us that.
Exactly. But
so we believe them.
Exactly.
Okay.
But you
okay,
really
all right. See where we're going. Okay.
your gases. It's like, and not. It's like people get
Gravity
real big.
is another one too.
Right. You see things fall, but do you see gravity?
No, you don't.
You
just told us that 9 point something.
Yeah. People make noise even with COVID and all of that. Right. I'm not really going there, but just making the point. And I say to people, I say, look, whether or not you call it COVID, Corona, whether it's some kind of manufactured thing or whatever it is, you call it, you name it. There's a reality that people have been dying and people have been getting sick. However you account for that, there is around this time and season since 2019 into 2020, a number of persons have been experiencing this kind of reality. You could spend all the time in the world trying to debate whether it's Corona, whether it's this. My issue is there is a problem that we all can see. And because the truth of the matter is, even the things we see, there are limitations to that. The things we touch, there are limitations to that. And that's why I began by saying there's a level of humility that human beings have to have in being able to navigate living in this world. And that's one of the interesting things, in terms of how the Bible captures Genesis and the first sin. Again, we could spend all the time trying to go into the details, but look at how the first sin comes about. Satan says to Eve, you will be like God, which means this appeals to this appetite of, I want to be monarch, I want to know everything, be in charge. And so Eve loses the humility, innocence of patience, trust, wait on God too. And she now decides, and if you look at it, the more human beings elevate themselves beyond themselves, is the more destructive we become. The less we're humbled and realize our need for one another and God, is the more destructive we become. You think of it.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, the more humbled I am, where I am now realizing that I am not the monarch of all I survey. I am not the finality of my life, etc. Is the more I'm going to value Crystal and DJ Man and other people around me. But the more I feel I need no one, is the more destructive I become and the more dishonest I become.
Okay, because hold a second there, wait a minute. I gotta process all this. Hold on. Because like you have taken my mind down to leadership, to a role of leadership. Okay, I'm good now. I'm good. Let's go. Let's continue. Humility versus, and we were talking about this guy who's Kanye West, and he has a history of mental illness, but he actually rewrote the Bible because I think he feels that he is up there and almighty and what's not. But let's take a pin there and do a little bit, and then we're going to come back. But we're not going to stop because of the time. It is 22 minutes on to 10 o'clock. All right. So season's ingredients from the team at Flow. Don't forget you can save up to $1,500 off your mobile bills in 2022 When you come in today and add your mobile to your existing fixed services like Flow TV, broadband, and fixed line. Not a postpaid customer yet, you can upgrade for as low as $55 a month and get a new 6.8-inch display screen TCL 20E for only $99 while stocks last. Plus, get 10 bonus entries into our weekly Christmas promotion draw with over $100,000 in cash and prizes to be rewarded. Terms and conditions apply. Flow, keeping you connected this Christmas. All right, and as we're in this season, hold your own Christmas from Chateaubriand all the way through town, straight to Fancy in the north. Hiron is giving you an extra Christmas joy. Enjoy Hiron 4 for $10 at participating locations across SVG for Christmas until December 27th. Happy holidays from Hiron. Please drink responsibly. And you can also purchase your Hiron soft drinks and have a festive season with our Island Mixer and Island flavors. Mix your cases with bitter lemon, fruit cocktail, cola champagne, Mobby, ginger ale, soda water, and tonic water at $36.67 per case. Happy holidays from the St. Vincent Brewery Limited. All right, this morning we're joined by Reverend Adolph Davis. He's no stranger to Extreme FM, talking a bit about Christianity and controversies. Some people have quite a bit of questions because they find it very hard to believe things in the Bible. Now, I'm going to take that same thread to Christmas. A lot of people have questions about Christmas. I mean, we've heard from time to time the conflict between even Santa Claus and Christmas, and in the Bible it says at Christmas time it actually happened sometime in early up in the year, and it wasn't snowing in the Bible, and it's not Christmas Day, and let's go there. Let's go to Christmas.
Well, let me begin by saying, let's take all of that stuff as true. Does it change the fundamental purpose and message? For example, was it, I think, 2 Sundays or last Sunday, I was making the point. Mary celebrates her 75th birth anniversary. She was born on, well, all right, let's go this first example. She was born August 20th, whatever year. And she has organized with her family members, the children and everybody has organized for this grand 75th birth anniversary celebration for the mother. When they check some of the children work time and all that scheduling and all the problems, they've decided, let us celebrate. Let's have the event in November. In November, you have all people from all over come for granny, auntie, whoever it is, 75th birth anniversary celebration. And on that day, we wish her happy birthday. We even sing happy birthday. We give all kind of gifts and go on and go on. I don't know, number one, that there are people who are going to say, me ain't coming because she bought the August. Me see where you are going now with. I don't know that people refuse to sing happy birthday to her in November because the birthday is August. In fact, as far as I know, no one has a problem celebrating her birthday. In fact, I have had experiences where people who came to the event didn't even know it's not November, it's the birthday. It's somebody else telling, no, she birthday was in August. And they had no problem with celebrating her birthday in November and singing happy birthday, etc. So I've asked myself, so okay, if that's how we function normally, how is it that the issue of whether the date is correct has become such a vexing issue to the point that person say, I'm not celebrating? Number one. Number two.
Christian.
Yeah. Number two, I know of cases where, and it happened more with our older folks. Miss Mary, again, use Mary. Miss Mary has been celebrating her birthday the 20th of August. And she's now 60 years old, 62. And her children live overseas and they want her to come up and live. So she goes now to try to get she passport and all them things. She never fight up with them things before. And when she goes to the registry and all of that to get her thing, she discovers that August 20th let me say, whatever year she was celebrating, 1940, whatever. And now discovers that her real birthday, based on the documents in the registry, is January 18th.
I've had that experience with my grandmother.
All right. And some of those folks, post that discovery, they still celebrate about there's August. They don't change to January. And when August come, they'll tell you, well, me always a celebrate me birthday August. But since me went the other day, they tell me January, but me not change. And nobody has an issue with that. My point in giving those examples is the issue of Christmas. And yes, Christmas has been corrupted in so many ways, etc. But the issue and message of Christmas is there is an historical event, bar none, that Jesus was born. Whoever Jesus was, for us as Christians, this is God becoming man. Even if you don't believe he's God becoming man, I made the point earlier, this is the most outstanding example of our human identity. This person was born. You mean to tell me that what Jesus represents isn't far more significant than whether we were able to get the historical facts right? I don't think that there are too many people who believe Jesus is actually born anymore on this 25th of December. The people who, for that, before now with internet and so, it didn't matter. They just take it as what it is.
Okay.
Since internet and so forth and other such research information, for a lot of people, the issue is not whether or not it's the 25th. The issue is what this represents. And it's such a fascinating thing that what Jesus has represented has generally brought out the best in us in a way nothing else does. It's amazing how people share gifts, show love, even if hypocritically so, try to be kind and generous. When you look at how historically, before it became so much more exploitative and commercial, people went out of the way to try and feed the poor and be kind to one another, because what Jesus embodies, this gift of Jesus to humanity, this love of God in Christ to humanity, was such an outstanding, noble characteristic that people who not even Christian felt, boy, this is a feel-good season. This is a season where the best of humanity.
At the end of Christmas, even if you're not a Christian,
Yes,
there are organizations across the entire island right now. You feel good giving, getting up and cooking. But why doesn't that stay with people throughout the rest of the year though? If it feels so good, why it don't stick?
Because I think the problem of our selfishness. And that's part of what Christianity tries.
One season can't change that.
No, you see, and if you look at it, the most vicious and vile people like to do a good to feel good about themselves.
Okay.
And but effectively you allow the selfishness to be the more prominent and dominant feature. And so Christmas gives us that season to, one, remind ourselves, two, to feel good about ourselves. And I've learned not to take that for granted, because I prefer two things. One, I prefer people to, even if it's only once a year, feel good about themselves and do something good than not to do any good at all. And so I have been careful, because there was a time, to be honest, when I used to say, well, if it's hypocritical and you're only doing it, don't do none. But then I realized it's better for people to do it one time than none.
I think that.
And when I think of it as well, I also think, and I've seen the opposite of it that made me realize, it's good to at least have one moment that reminds us what we should be. Even if we ain't sufficiently take the learning, but it reminds us of how we should function. And I think there is value in that. And if I take away that,
even if it's fake,
because a reminder. It's like a skit.
But if it doesn't work, if the person does not come down to earth per se and learn from that,
well, I don't know. I would give up on trying.
Okay.
It's like a dramatic presentation. If I'm in the arts and I do drama, and every year I'm doing a presentation on domestic violence, and people know what we're doing on the stage is fake, but the hope is that it will give a reminder and message. But domestic violence numbers are still going up. I still think there is a value in doing the presentation, because hopefully, sometimes the fact is there's some people who are getting it, but we don't know they're getting it because they are, number one, the minority in the large scheme of things, and two, most of the times good news don't really travel. There are a lot of people who change. There are a lot of people who, because of the love expressed at Christmas and they're receiving of that love, it has really done something for their life. But we don't hear much of that because those are not the things that we celebrate.
But should we be sharing whenever we do something good for somebody else? Should that be something that's promoted though?
It depends. I think, generally speaking, we live with the principle the right hand shouldn't know what the left hand is doing. But I think sometimes, like churches and organizations, because they're reacting to people saying they don't care and they're not, then is when they try to say, well, look, we actually are. So I think that has also been one of the things why some organizations have tried to say we are doing, because they've been accused of not doing. But I think generally we all agree that the best way to give is that your right hand is supposed to know what your left hand is doing.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna stick up in there again. We're joined by Reverend Dolph Davis, talking about Christmas now, and some of the questions that people have about whether or not it's actually the 25th day of December. Well, he outlined the meaning behind that, even if it's not. Do you what do you think it is?
The
The birth of Jesus Christ. What do you think it is?
I think it is the most amazing demonstration of God's love
No
and
matter what day it
interest in
falls
us.
on. Okay.
No
All right.
matter what day.
All right. All right.
I think, and I haven't, to be honest, I've learned long that it's not the 25th, but I've never, to be honest, it has never been that important to me
Okay.
to take time to try and study and figure out which date it is, because I ask myself, but even if I figure out what date it is, what difference will it make to me? So I could go and spend all my time and demonstrate how knowledgeable I am about the history and the time of Jesus' birth. But at the end of the day, how beneficial is that going to be to me? And that's one of the things I say to people, even in terms of discussing issues. I remember years ago, I met a man on the road, and I used to do this television program in Guyana, and he said, "Oh, you're Reverend Davis, and I got a question for you." I said, "Okay, but if I'm able to answer it, what difference will it make to you?" He said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "No, I don't want just to be engaged in an intellectual exercise. If the knowledge is not going to be transformative, then all you want is to either prove you know or I don't know. Then that's purposeless for me. I'm not going to waste my time."
Okay.
And then
Interesting.
and then, because a lot of persons, the purpose of a question is not to
To
seek
show you off,
truth.
yeah.
Is to prove that they know something that you don't know. But what value is that in edifying us and building us up? And so for me, even in terms of my research, I'm saying I didn't think it beneficial. I'm not saying for somebody else it might be, but for me, it's not going to change the price of eggs. And so I could use my time researching to research some other things than to invest a whole lot of time trying to figure out the exact date of Jesus' birth. I'm not saying for somebody else it may not be beneficial and valuable, but for me, because it's not going to change the ultimate important facts.
Okay. Final question this morning, because we have about 3 minutes. I hope you can answer within this time. Do you feel threatened as a Christian, knowing that one, there are other religions out there that either have similar celebrations around around Christmas, or even other maybe nationalities that do something different to celebrating Christmas? Do you feel threatened?
No, I know there is, there are other celebrations around this time. The Hindus, for example, leading up to Christmas, they have the Diwali, you have Hanukkah, and the Jewish celebration. As I said, different people approach, view the world differently and live by different principles and values. And I will share why I do what I do and who I believe in and what I believe in. And as part of our understanding of Christianity, to share. And I believe confidently, firmly, without the shadow of a doubt, that if the Christian lives faithful to what they believe and teach, and if they take time to properly understand it, to share it, I believe many Muslims, many Hindus, many other persons will come to see value and worth in what we have and embrace it, which is really why Christianity in the first place became one of the more dominant religions. Yes, you had the political dynamics and so forth, the colonialism, but a lot of the growth of Christianity came because people saw there was something bona fide, legitimate, valuable in the way in which we must live as human beings that they wanted to be identified with. And so I believe Christianity can sell itself, to use the word, sell itself in inverted commas. But I know that there are other persons who begin with different orientations and experiences. So I don't see it as a threat. It's a reality of the world in which we live.
Okay. All right. So really quickly, a final thoughts to Christmas, maybe to wish everybody a happy Christmas. Not a happy Christmas, a Merry
Yeah.
Christmas.
Well, to be honest, I have also become very little apprehensive about the Merry Christmas as well, because of what merriment has become.
Oh, okay.
And so it's sometimes a little more cumbersome. But I say Blessed Christmas deliberately
Sorry.
to kind of
I'm
to
sorry.
kind of no, I there's no sorry in that, but to kind of remind of the spirituality of Christmas,
Mhm.
because you see Christmas has now become a merriment time. And a couple of years ago I noticed we even had you have parties on Christmas Day, and I'm thinking, but how does a season that is supposed to lift up the best of our humanity, that is supposed to be about how we care and help each other, and how is a season that is supposed to be about love, how could we take and effectively, as some would say, bastardize this season into making it simply about fetting and profiteering? And I think the more we become about how I am and how I feel and my nice time, rather than how we look out for one another, is the more we will destroy Christmas, destroy our community. And I think that's part of why January has more and more become a hard month, because Christmas is really not the kind of time where we have loved and cared. It's a time where sometimes businesses tell you you're getting bonuses and not bonuses,
Because bonus is not even central
discounts,
term
right?
now.
Discounts, and only to discover that they actually dropped the price in November so they could raise it in December, and some of those different schemes and so forth, and or raise the price, sorry, in November so they could drop it in December, so you think you get a discount.
But
And there's all this exploitative stuff, that doesn't help. And I think we need to be much more conscious about, as we often say, putting the Christ back in Christmas, because there is something about what Christ represents
mhm.
that if we could celebrate that, the love, the peace, the selflessness, the care, we would be such a better society. And it's not an easy accomplishment, but it's not impossible. And I think a
mean,
lot of time we kind of give up on the task.
we've been trying since the beginning of time. Still
Yeah,
unaccomplished.
but
Oh
we have
boy.
seen the reason I think it is still possible is because the fact that you see it accomplished in snippets here and there
Mhm.
means it can be accomplished.
All right. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, what an interesting discussion here. And I'm sorry we couldn't include a lot of, well, any of the responses because of the time. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come in and discuss the questions that people would have had in a very, very broad way, because you
Right,
weren't able to
right.
like hone in
Each of the
on.
one, right,
Yeah. Because I even want to know like how back in the day Mary became pregnant and she never had sex with God. If now the biology of it. I
right.
mean, well, we can't answer that now
Well,
because
but
of the time.
again, you see,
Or that's just a figure of speech.
no, I think you said, I heard a brief part where you responded to effectively miracle.
Oh, so it's a
I
miracle.
think human beings
Wow.
forget that there are things that happen, and we see it.
And we can't answer
Even
that.
minus God, we see things that happen, and I mean minus God, meaning minus somebody acknowledging God.
Right.
We see things that happen in our world that defy logic, defy science, defy everything. We see it. And so I don't know how people find it so impossible to believe that there are things that happen that we call miracles, because some say, oh well, there's a scientific explanation. But I've never found a scientific explanation for something to happen the way it happened when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to say, for example, let's say the waters were part and it was something that normally happened every year. But If you say the waters, just using the Egypt story, normally part every year, what accounts for when the Israelites were right there, waiting on the Egyptians coming after them, and it is at that point that the water parts. So my point is, you may be able to give a scientific explanation as to how the water part, but being able to tell me why the water part when it parted. So somebody is sick, and yes, God doesn't. Not everybody is healed, but George is sick and dying, and and the doctor said we can't do nothing at all. And then somebody goes and prays with George, and in that moment, the person prays with George. George starts to get better. You could go and try and now find all kind of explanation. Say, well, so how come it is at that point? Even after the doctors didn't discover and said anything. And I have not been able to hear anybody give me any sober. Maybe there is one, but I haven't found any explanation that convinces me. Because I am mindful that there are times when God does some things that the only way we can package it is that's a miracle.
It's a miracle. All right. Thank you so much, Reverend Davis. All right, and all the best for the season.
Thank you for having me as well.
No
And
problem.
blessings to you.
All right, thank you.
DJ Monday.